Are you ready?
You bet I am.
Someone light the candle.
Turn out the lights.
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary.
I'm just kidding. We're totally not doing this.
Welcome to the Lady Dicks podcast.
Season 2.
We're about to rain some seriously weird shit down on you. Pirates.
Witches.
And lots of bitches.
More ghosts.
I think they prefer to be called specters.
Mummies.
Lots of mummies.
The wrapped in fabric kind, not the pack your lunch kind.
Gangstas.
Like Gangs of New York.
Like Al Capone.
No Leo?
No Leo.
Ships.
So many ships.
Okay, so here's the deal. You can find us on all of your favorite podcasting apps, Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, and even Spotify.
Seriously?
Yeah, we're on Spotify.
I mean, granted, I don't have Spotify, so I can't check.
Well, search the Lady Dicks podcast on wherever you listen and you'll find us.
Mommy, this circular content that is not suitable for kids like me.
Welcome to Crime Crazy, the weekly true crime podcast with Eryn Plime and
Marie Kent,
where we prove
that we know nothing about our legal system,
but we're still crazy for a good true crime story. Do you know how many weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks it took before Jordan and I figured out how to do our intro? And you did it on the first try.
Thank you. I am a professional podcaster.
It's true. It's
so
true.
Hello, everyone. I am one of Diana and Erin's friends.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a knitter friend, and I'm also a podcaster. And they invited me on to guest host today. I'm so excited.
Yay! We're excited to have you.
Yeah.
So we are going to talk about your podcast. We usually do that at the end, but I am happy to mix it up if you want to mix it up.
I'll mix it up real briefly because I need to tell you what I learned this week.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Which probably has to do with...
Has to do with my life. All right. So my podcast, I do My Book of Mormon podcast, which, I mean, everybody listening just went, what?
Yeah, pretty much. They pretty much did.
Yes. So in case you're wondering, what, you have a Mormon on your show? No, you guys, I am not a Mormon. I've never been a Mormon.
I don't even play one on the podcast.
I really don't. No, I definitely don't. What we've been doing is we've been reading through all of the religious texts of the Mormon Church, and we made a drinking game out of it. This is all just a really fancy way of saying that I am a history nerd, like, oh my God. And so, like, Mormon history is American history, and I care about American history, so that's what we're learning over there.
That sounds very cool. I know nothing about history. Actually, pretty much that, like, we know nothing about the legal system. That's how I live my life.
Yeah.
I know nothing about, like, I mean, I'm pretty well versed in Harry Potter. That's about it.
Your knowledge of Harry Potter is like,
It is
so impressed.
It's bad.
I think the only thing comparable is my knowledge of 1830s and 1840s, like Ohio and Missouri and Illinois, which is a real niche market, you guys.
I mean, to be fair, both of them kind of are.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I know nothing about history.
Oh, I only know this very specific thing.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, but I am dying to tell you what I learned.
I am excited. But it's not related to. I thought you were doing something. It wasn't related to Mormonism.
No, it's not.
Okay.
No. I bet all of your listeners can tell that I listen to your show because I'm like, but we have a segment we have to do.
Right now, there's something else that comes next.
Yes. Okay, everybody. I am here to show you that you can learn things about yourself at any point in your life. Because you can be like me and discover at age 37 that you are allergic to corn.
That sucks so hard,
It's
Marie.
a thing. Oh my God, I feel so much better now.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, that is good.
It is fantastic, but when, depending on where you look, 75 to 90% of all food has corn in it in some way, like
That's
processed food.
insane.
Yeah, because it's yeah.
But corn is not terribly digestible.
No, but it's a really good filler.
Yeah,
And depending on how you process
it's
it, it's cheap. It's subsidized, and it can be very sweet.
Yeah.
Or depending on how you do it, it can keep things from sticking together. So
Yeah.
shredded cheese.
Yep.
You know, your ketchup, that
Alcohol.
Yes, alcohol. Man, I did not know that vodka could be made from corn. And,
It's so tragic. Also,
yeah.
popcorn.
I never liked popcorn. Like, never, ever. And I was never a huge fan of cornbread. And now that I'm looking back, I'm like, oh, but...
Right.
Yeah.
You just had this, like, subconscious, like, now I feel like crap.
Yeah, but the way that I hear some people when they figure out that they have celiac, and so they remove gluten, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, my joints don't hurt anymore. Girl, it me. Like, wow. And so I'm thrilled to have learned what I learned. What did you learn?
Okay, so I definitely learned shit about Harry Potter this week because binge mode. I learned that young professionals in orientation within their first 2 months at a new company are willing to dress up like a hippogriff in front of everyone.
Maybe I should work at your company.
It's kind of amazing. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
But actually, I learned a lot about knitting this week, which isn't really a fact that I can share.
Oh,
but just sort of in general, because I hadn't ever really followed a pattern before, and I had never made something square before.
Well, you were you following a pattern when you were sitting on my floor knitting a couple days ago?
Attempting to follow a pattern, not successfully. It was supposed to look like a grid, and when I was finished, I mean, there were definitely horizontal lines and definitely vertical lines.
Yes,
that none of them lined up. So I have almost made a 9x9 square once.
You know, everybody starts reading patterns somewhere.
Mine was more of a writing down the pattern was the problem, and I missed some stitches, and then the whole thing doesn't line up.
Knitting, in some ways it's really forgiving, but in others, oh hell no.
Yeah, this not so much.
Yeah.
So.
To catch everyone up, Eryn and Diana and I and a bunch of other friends, we meet pretty much every week, if possible, and knit, which is amazing. And so I wish this was a knitting podcast because we could go so long about knitting.
Maybe we should just do a spin-off knitting podcast. We have the equipment and we have so much free time.
Absolutely.
I mean, just
we have
I have nothing to do.
Yeah.
That's why I'll be editing this Monday night at about 9:00.
You know, that is the way that God intended, says the girl who does not have a religious podcast, but is kind of about religion.
I feel like you do have a religious podcast.
I think I might.
I think you do.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not you buy into any of it, it is the Book of Mormon. I feel like that's kind of by definition.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my story, it's not about the book. Well, I mean, it is about the Book of Mormon. But when I tell my story, you guys, I mean, I don't know who your audience is, other than I know that I am your audience.
Yeah.
Clearly.
I mean, you're kind of our audience.
I am.
Really pretty much
everyone is exactly like me.
Pretty
awesome.
much,
That's what I thought.
yeah.
But just in case there are people listening who are, they're absolutely true believing Mormons, cool, I'm going to tell that perspective. And if you're like, what's a Mormon? I got you covered.
Good.
And also if you're like, oh, Mormons, grrr, I got that covered too.
Nice.
Don't worry about it. I'm going to have all the perspectives.
Nice. I am going to talk about Satan a little bit on mine, actually.
Oh my God. Okay, you tell your story first. I need to hear about Satan.
So it's not so much about Satan, but that's a component. That's actually my thread that ties everything together.
Ah, yes, because you're doing your every story is tied together.
Yes, to the previous one.
Yes, it is, shall we say, knit together with a common strand.
My God. I think you're going to fit right in. Nice.
Thanks.
Yes. So that is my tie. So do you want me to go first?
I do. Tell me about Satan.
All right. So
Satan.
here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go first, and I'm going to tell a story, and it is definitely sensational, and I think it's interesting, and I really enjoyed it. And then you're going to go and totally put me to shame with all of your wonderful research.
Well, there's this thing that happens when you've been doing a podcast for years. And like we're pretty tied to like what we're reading.
Yeah.
And so we're learning history, but like there are stories that we just can't get to, and I have been full to bursting on telling these.
Oh, well, perfect. I have an outlet for you.
Yes. You're really doing me a favor. Okay.
Oh,
back,
awesome.
Yeah,
I thought
back
it
to
was
Satan.
the
Back to
other way
Satan.
around.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, it's not about me, it's about Satan.
First, it's about pedophilia.
Oh.
I know.
Oh.
This is all really bad, and I feel like it gives like satanic cults a bad name, if that is a possible thing.
Depends on perspective.
Yeah. All right. So my story is about Miranda Barber, and it is a relatively, as in like this decade story.
Okay.
Okay. Which in a lot of ways makes it even more tragic. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the thread that I am using is last time I told a story, which guys, oh my God, I'm so sorry about that story. I have had a cold for like a month. And yeah, I was not terribly coherent.
It's like you took some Sudafed.
A lot.
And then turned on the microphone. Timing.
I kept forgetting I was telling a story, and it was rough. But I'm fairly certain there was a cult involved. Well, actually, I'm fairly certain there wasn't, but people claimed there was. So like that counts. Or maybe there was. I felt very unclear about it even when I wasn't taking tons of Sudafed. But this one definitely has cult involvement, or at least claims of cult involvement. So that's my thread. So Miranda had a terrible childhood, and I read through the story, and I don't know that she ever stood a chance.
Yeah.
Which is just awful. And I know there are other people who have terrible childhoods that probably don't stand a chance, and yet they do okay. So she is definitely to blame, but man, this poor little girl. So when she was 4 years old, her mother, whose name is Elizabeth, who appears in this story quite a bit, claims that she never went to stay with anyone except for her mother's sister and brother-in-law. And so that was like the only people that ever watched her, that she was ever alone with, other than, you know, her mom and dad at the time, which is so unlucky if it is true, because of course her uncle. Yeah,
that uncle. He was that uncle.
He was that uncle, and by the age of 4 was abusing her sexually, and she just was going through all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
It is not a surprise. And actually, let me back up and do some fancy editing to make this sound coherent. So the uncle's name is Richard Fernandez, and he was a former member of the Army. He is now 43. In 2013, he was 43 years old. At the time, he had been married to Miranda's aunt Melissa, so mother's sister, and they all lived in Alaska, which is where she lives off and on throughout the story. Okay. She lives in a number of different states. He was eventually caught. So Miranda told her mom and everything, you know, he got caught. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison for first-degree sexual assault of a minor, which, I mean, kudos to the justice system. I feel like that doesn't happen enough.
That is not where I was expecting this story to go.
No.
Okay.
He got out.
Well, that is where I expected this story to go.
He served 6 years, which in a lot of ways sounds like a pretty good chunk of the sentence, considering I feel like people always just get out really, really early. But then he went right back. In 2011, he was distributing child pornography.
Gross.
Yeah.
Dude.
Right. So he's back in prison, hopefully forever at this point.
That's not long enough.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
The only good thing about it is that my understanding of people who hurt children and then go to prison is that prison sucks a lot for them.
Oh, darn.
I know. It's the only saving grace in any of this. So, of course, this damaged Miranda a lot. So, several years later, Miranda and her mother and her father, who was married to her mother at the time, and her older sister Ashley, moved a couple 100 miles south to another, still in Alaska. Mm-hmm. They, you know, enrolled in school, and they tried to get over all of this horrible stuff that had happened to her. However, when she was 12, she started to really act out, which, again, not surprising.
Kind of normal, yeah.
Yeah. And she started to run away. And fell into this or sought out this relationship with a 25-year-old who was the leader of a satanic cult. Yes. And his name was Forrest, and that is the only name that we have at all.
Okay, Forrest, the satanic cult dude.
Forrest, yes. So one day when she was 12 years old, she came home and she told her mother that she belonged to this 25-year-old named Forrest, who was the leader of a cult, and that he had branded her by carving a swastika into the back of her neck and carving his name onto her thigh, and that now she had to do whatever he told her to because he owned her. Yeah. So Mom, of course, reacted really badly to this, but she also was going through a divorce at the time. So there was a lot on her plate as well.
Yeah.
They sent Miranda away for some time to a program that didn't do enough good.
Yeah.
And shortly after she came back, she got into heroin and just ran away more frequently and just had lots and lots of issues. When she was 13 years old, she got pregnant.
At 13?
At 13.
Oh, God.
And I don't know if it was Forrest or other members of the cult, but somehow in this relationship, they did a home abortion to get rid of the baby, which was described as brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, not just that it was a home, but it was apparently a pretty rough home abortion as well. So she went back into the drug rehab, was called North Star. And she went back for a while. And again, it just didn't do enough for all of the stuff that she had been through at this point.
Yeah.
And she came home. She then got pregnant again, this time at the age of 17. And the father of this child is not really known.
Okay.
So Miranda claims that he died or perhaps was murdered. But they didn't ever really confirm who it was. So it was hard to tell if that was the truth. And this baby she kept. So she gave birth to a little girl and she named her Aria. And for all appearances, she seemed to really like this baby and really dote on her and really want to be a good mom to her. Lots of pictures on Facebook because, of course, now it's like 2011 and Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook is a thing.
It is. And so she raised her daughter for a little while. And at this point, she's a teenager still.
Yeah.
Still has issues with heroin, still belongs to Forrest and this cult that she's in. That's when she met Elette Barber. And I am not certain that is how you say this name, but it is Elytte.
Oh. Elite? Well, whatever it is, I'm butchering it. Let's go with Elette. Sure.
Yeah. So they were living in North Carolina at the time that she met her future husband. They got married and started to raise her daughter together.
Okay.
She didn't ever claim that he was the father, so this was somebody new in her life. Also during that time, in order to, I guess, support her new family, Miranda would put ads on Craigslist and sell herself to whoever. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's...
Hired herself out as a companion or a female companion is what all of her ads said.
Okay.
Prices ranging from $50 to $850 an hour.
Oh, my.
Which I feel like...
range.
Yeah. I feel like were I ever going to do this, which I am definitely never going to do this, but I feel like that's how my ad would go too, because I honestly have absolutely no concept of what people actually charge or how you determine your value.
I think it's all negotiation.
Probably, but I wouldn't even know.
I don't know
what
where I'd
was
start.
fair. Right.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it would have to be several $1 million an hour for me to even consider. But I'm also fairly certain no one would pay that, which is part of the point.
I'm way too much of a rule follower to figure that out. And also, Craigslist personal ads don't exist anymore. Got taken down, which is a real shame.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, kind of like Cannibal Cafe and all those other wonderful internet Okay, maybe not. just feel like Craigslist ads so frequently in true crime stories lead to murder or some awful, like people selling their children, like just terrible shit.
Yeah.
So I'm sure people also sold like cars and furniture and things that were more.
I mean, I got a bunch of toy trains off of Craigslist.
Right.
And the guy had no idea what he was selling, and I got several $100s worth of stuff for $100. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, he did try to talk me into paying more for it, and I was like, nope. And then I left. Which I don't think that's comparable to selling yourself on Craigslist, but that's my Craigslist story. So
right. I don't think I've ever sold or purchased anything on Craigslist. But I mean, now there are whole apps that are just for that purpose.
Like,
which,
there's an app for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
I guess, you know.
Okay, so she is selling herself on the Craigslist.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Somewhere between 50 and 850. I mean, she has a package for all budgets.
Absolutely. It's good to
guess.
diversify.
Yep.
That's a solid business model.
So it sounds like some of these ads were placed with the intention of selling herself on Craigslist in order to make money.
Yeah.
But at least, according to her, 3 of them were placed not so much for that as to lure someone to her home, where she and her husband could then, you know, murder them. So,
well, Craigslist, it meets all needs.
well, like I said, you know, for the purposes of murder, that's kind of what it's for. So later in an interview, Miranda claimed that there were at least 2 dates that she and her husband arranged, although, of course, the guy didn't know the husband was involved, where they were no-shows.
Okay.
Which also makes sense. Like that, Yeah. But it was really disappointing to them because they had intended to murder the guy and then he didn't show up and then they didn't get to have their fun.
Gosh, how anticlimactic for them.
In so many ways.
Ugh.
Yeah, pretty much. She is also only 19 at this point. Yeah.
Wow.
Which, when I was 19, I was like, oh, that's totally an adult. And now that I'm not 19 anymore, although I will say for the record that I am still not the oldest one on the podcast, even at this moment. But only by a couple of months.
But, wow.
But yeah, now it is not. 19 is not a grown-up. That is a young child, I feel like.
That's a proto-adult, but still, I mean, even... I mean, I would say even 17, 16, 13-year-olds would know that selling yourself on Craigslist is not the safest thing for you, and also hopefully the rest of society knows also maybe not the safest, but apparently not everybody uses their wisdom in the way that they should.
She didn't.
She's 19. Okay, 19. Keep going. Oh, God.
Well, and really, to be fair, it was safe for her because they had a plan. So she went and picked up her date on November 11th, 2013. That is a lie. It is actually November 11th, 2015. And Elet, or however you say his name, hid in the back of the car underneath a blanket. And she was in the driver's seat and she picked up her date who, she's this tiny little girl, and I didn't actually find it. I didn't see where it gave like her height or her weight or whatever, but she looks like a kid in high school. Like she's a little tiny young girl. Her guy that she picked up, her victim, was 6'2" and weighed 278 pounds. So a lot bigger than her. Yeah. So he hid in the back of the car under the blanket until she gave him the signal, at which point he popped out with a cable cord, which I don't exactly know what that is, unless we're talking about, like, cable, like, in your house.
I feel like at that time it would be cable in your house, so basically just a strong wire covered with rubber, probably.
He wrapped it around the victim and held him down so that she could stab him over 20 times.
Why?
Which did not kill him. Ouch. Because that was their plan. Like, that's why they lured him there, was so that they just wanted to kill him. Somebody. Anybody, really.
I mean, I've had some bad days where I'm like, I just want to, but I have never followed through 3 times.
Right. And this was a lot of planning and like spanned.
Yeah.
I mean, at least it had to be days where they were considering doing this and like planning it. And so it gets worse. So
How does it get worse? We have a huge guy in the car.
Bleeding and spasming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gross. They're
Yeah.
never going to get that out of the seats.
Never. So they drove around a little bit more. He was apparently choking and gasping for air. His name is La Ferrera. Is his last name.
Okay.
And they sort of drove around and looked for somewhere that they could dump him, essentially, so that, they could, I guess, get away with it. I guess if you never take anyone in your car, then there's no reason for unless the upholstery's white, maybe they would never know. It doesn't seem like a very good plan, considering that they planned for so long.
Yeah, I feel like you should also plan the after you have stabbed somebody thing.
And, okay, so, obviously I don't frequently plan murders, but
if you did.
But I do frequently think about how I would murder someone.
Yeah.
And that's actually where I start.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so I can't quite think about the killing part, and I don't know who I'd want to murder, but like afterwards, what am I going to do to get away with it? That's where I start.
Yeah.
They didn't really think that
They
part
did the opposite.
through.
But okay.
Right?
All right.
They were like, we don't care. We just want to murder somebody, and then we'll figure it out afterwards.
Man, those are different life choices than what I've made.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Same. I'm pretty happy with mine, really.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So they ended up strangling La Ferrera, and they dropped his corpse. It doesn't say where, but just, somewhere somewhere off the beaten path where hopefully nobody would find him for a little bit.
Yes.
Then they went to a strip club because it was her husband's, Iletti, his 22nd birthday, and they needed to celebrate in some manner other than stabbing and strangling a random stranger in their car and then dumping his body. Also,
wow.
is this look on your face? My first thought is, you're covered in blood.
Yeah, I was going to go there too. I was like, did they bring a change of clothes?
Maybe they went home first and like they went to a strip club just sometime after on that same day.
Did they put down a tarp on the seats? Because, even if you did change your clothes, you still got to like sit on that seat where there was a guy who was bleeding. So wouldn't that like get on your jeans?
I feel like Ilette now has to ride in the back seat everywhere. Like nobody can sit in the passenger seat anymore. That's done.
Maybe they just have a spare passenger seat.
Maybe they had 2 cars. A spare passenger seat. Right. And they just popped it out and replaced it with another one.
Surely they do that. Maybe they live next to a junkyard. I am giving them so much benefit of the doubt right now. This is ridiculous. Or
they didn't think through like where they were going to put the body,
but they have a
spare seat. So it's okay. Also, I don't even want to think about it really, but like,
okay,
did they hire a sitter? Like, surely their daughter is not attending these events.
I'm going to guess the daughter is safely somewhere else, being very happily and well cared for in a house full of love and adequate food.
Yeah. God, I hope so.
Yes. Let's just all believe that, everybody. Okay. Back to the strip club.
Okay. So they went to the strip club for a little while, went home, went about their business. So, of course, this person was missed. La Ferrera was missed. And so the police, in what seems to be uncommon in these stories, did a really good job of investigating and traced his last phone call to her because she'd given him her number and he'd called her, and so there was also that going on.
Yeah.
So they went to her house and they arrested her. She didn't really try to say she hadn't done it or wasn't involved, so again, not the best planning. A couple days later, they arrested her husband after she had talked to them for a while.
Okay.
And shortly after that, she gave an interview with the press.
Oh, girl, no. Oh, bad idea. Oh, what did she say?
So in this interview, she kind of told the whole story. So everything that we know, plus that she had a murderous alter ego, or multiple personality, or all kinds of, whose name was Super Miranda. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which really does not inspire fear.
Wow.
But Super Miranda came out whenever she was like in a murderous rage and needed to kill people. So driven by whatever it was that Forrest and his cult had inspired within her. She said that she only ever killed bad people.
Was LaFerrere a bad guy, or was he just a guy?
Well, I mean, he responded to an ad for sex online.
But that's not, well, I mean, if it's between consenting adults, I feel like that's a totally okay thing. But
it does not fit the definition of like the other people that she talked about were like murderers or like people that were dangerous in some way or had committed a crime or had hurt somebody, and then like this guy just happened to respond to a Craigslist ad. Desperate. Like at most, I feel like desperate.
Yeah. Desperate does not equal evil.
No.
Necessarily.
No. So, how many bad people, you may be asking yourself?
Yes. I'm like,
Would you like to guess how many she confessed to?
Oh, God. I'm going to go with 7.
So she's 19 years old.
Yes.
She's been in this cult since she was 12. So that's, 7 years.
Yeah.
I think you should go higher.
No.
Yeah, I think you should go higher.
yeah, okay. I'm going to go. Oh man. Oh, I don't want to. 21.
Higher.
Shut up. This is a bad idea. Okay. 40.
So she said it was more than 22, but less than 100.
No. Oh.
So she said that the very first murder that she was ever involved in, which really started this spree of hers, was with Forrest, the satanic cult leader. That they had gone into an alley. There was a dude there. He's like, hey, I'm going to kill this guy. Here's a gun. And shot him. But didn't kill him. And then came up to her and said, okay, now it's your turn. You need to shoot him and finish the job. And she was like, no, I hate guns. I don't ever use guns. I'm not going to do that. So he grabbed her hand and he held it around the gun and they pulled the trigger and they killed the guy. And then that just awoke Super Miranda. And which I cannot say without wanting to laugh. And that from then on, she had to just kill all of these, somewhere between 22 and 100, which again, these large ranges.
Yeah.
With her. I get the feeling she's not very good with numbers.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of, I'm trying to think of something that I would estimate between like 22 and 100. I'd be like, number of times I've stubbed my toe on the kitchen chair.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I feel like murdering someone would be something that you keep track of.
At least closer. Right?
Yeah.
Especially when it's not over 50 years.
No, it's when it's over 7 years, but she was also like probably in an inpatient like psych thing for a while.
Right.
Or rehab, which is, like there's not a lot of oh, wow. 22 okay, girl.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but here's the thing. There's no way in hell that happened. Because so she claimed that this happened in Alaska, in Texas, in North Carolina, and in California. Because those are all the places she lived during that time period. That she just kind of went around killing people.
Are there commensurate unclaimed dead bodies?
There are not. Especially in Alaska. Where, like, it's, there aren't that many people. And especially in the places that she lived. And, like, no, there just aren't bodies. So, not only that, but her dad, who she did live with for part of this period, and her mom both said that in some of these places, like, they were already aware of all the shit going on in her life and kept a very close eye on her. And that in Texas and I forget what the other state was, it must have been California, that she was never even out of their sight the entire time they were there.
So maybe she's just making up this 22 to 100 story because, look, all these people are paying attention to me. Let's tell something super exciting.
Pretty much. Her dad said that it's possible that the gun in the alley and that first murder happened. Yeah. Although there's not a body to go with that one either, but she was not terribly clear about, like, where or when. And so maybe that happened. She would have been unsupervised. He said that during that sort of time period of her life when this probably would have happened, that she had run away several times for multiple days at a time. So he didn't know what she'd been up to, and he knew she was capable of murdering people. So maybe. But that the rest of the time, there's just no way. And even her friends, like everyone who knows her, just there's no way. The police have not, or had not at the time of these articles, gone to her to get a whole lot of detail about all of this because they just didn't have the bodies, and they were investigating and trying to match things up, but there just wasn't a crime to investigate.
And that's a good thing.
It is such a good thing.
I'm really glad. I was afraid there was going to be, this is the story of the mass murderer you never heard of, and
right.
Or it's some girl who's had a legitimately terrible childhood and, got some issues.
Right.
Who happened to be in front of a news camera.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, she definitely had some issues. She definitely murdered this one guy with absolutely no remorse. And then went about her life as if nothing had happened and would presumably have continued doing that. But her claim is that she is happy to show the police and FBI and whoever wants to investigate where these bodies are, that the reason that no one has found the bodies is because they're looking for whole bodies, but she cut them all up and dumped like pieces of them in the lake and pieces of them along the interstate and all of this other...
Does she even own a bone saw?
I don't... I
feel like
have
maybe
no idea. Well, yeah. I feel like there's just no chance. I don't even know that I believe the gun one. I do feel like it's quite the escalation from like nothing to let's brutally stab this guy many times and then strangle him and then not feel anything about it. But it doesn't make any sense that she would go from carefully dismembering and hiding bodies in multiple states over a period of years to driving around looking for a place to dump a whole body and then only getting away with it for a couple of days. Like, what happened?
None of this really makes sense.
None of it makes any sense.
Huh.
So that is my maybe, but probably not, serial killer. That maybe, but possibly not, was in a cult.
I'm going to go with probably not a very good cult, or even maybe just a group of people, and this one guy happened to be like, yeah, I'm of the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
And I say this because the Satanic Temple in Minneapolis, my fair city, they hold a bake sale every year.
Oh, yeah.
And it is a really good bake sale, and they are so nice.
Well, and that's everything I have ever heard about, like, confirmed people who claim, that this is what they believe and this is how they worship and this is the group they belong to. It's not this, like, dark, we're going to go out and carve our names into people and then murder everybody just for fun. It's never that. So, yeah. I think it was a terrible, tragic childhood, followed by seeking out really horrible influences, followed by a ton of attention from authority figures, and seeking more attention from authority figures. Or a lot of the articles that I was reading said that, maybe this was her trying to set herself up for an insanity defense or, some other diminished capacity kind of, which honestly, she should never be allowed to go free again. But if she spent the rest of her life in a hospital, I feel like that would be great.
Yeah, that might be an
seems
okay
fair.
life. Yeah.
So heavily medicated and hopefully with some joy.
That's a hard life.
Yeah.
Like, whatever, regardless of how we feel about her, she's had a hard life.
She did. No, she had a really terrible start that her mom, Elizabeth, in a bunch of articles, like both of her parents were very happy to talk to the press, which always rubs me the wrong way.
Oh, that's creepy.
Right? And in everything that I saw from her mom, she said, oh, well, we sent her to blah, 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 but they just didn't give her the help she needed. And so I feel like there was not very much done for this poor girl, that there was a lot of like, okay, we'll call the cops and then we'll like make an effort or will. Yeah, but it wasn't genuine. It wasn't extensive enough. There wasn't enough effort to put into it. And
that sounds a lot like, we'll just send her away for a bit and she'll be fixed.
Yeah.
When it's like, there's nothing to fix.
No.
There's, yeah.
Huh. So, super tragic.
That
also,
is a tragic story, yeah.
This little girl looks just like 30 kids that I taught. Like, she just looks like a kid. She just looks like nothing, not even...
Well, because she was just a kid.
She was, but she just looks like... You wouldn't look at her and think... Even the way that she was dressed and her hair and her makeup, and you wouldn't look at her and go, oh, I bet she murdered somebody. Like,
No.
Or I bet that she's addicted to heroin, or I bet she writes Craigslist ads for somewhere between $50 and $850.
Oh, man. Also, that's a really arbitrary range.
It really is.
850? Wouldn't you go to 1,000? You know, a nice round number.
Right?
But that's also me, and I like firm boundaries. So
I feel like one of my firm boundaries is, like, you're not going to touch me no matter how much you pay me. Sorry.
Yeah, gross. Just,
and if that is your thing, like, go for it. But that is, no.
Be safe about it.
Yeah, not a random Craigslist stranger either.
Never just get into a stranger's car.
Even if she's this tiny, cute little girl with a bulgy blanket in her backseat.
Yeah. I feel like that should be... So there is the rule of your show, call your people.
Yes.
And there should also be, when getting into a car and there's a lumpy blanket in the back, don't get into that car.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's some dude with cable wire back there.
Right. And a knife. Or maybe she had the knife.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I would say don't get into strangers' cars when you've, like, met them on the internet, but I do that all the time.
That's called Uber.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and...
It's a little different in the modern day. Like, Uber wasn't even really around in 2011, was it?
I don't
Or was it like
so.
a glint in the eye of the iPhone?
Maybe.
Something like that.
Yeah, I didn't know about it, but of course the place that I moved from in June, there was no such thing as rideshare. You might get one person, like, once a week who, like, accidentally found their way there. And that was it.
Well,
yeah.
I think I'm going to completely contrast your story.
Okay.
With something completely different. That it does involve religion, but way more than you think possible.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I am.
Okay, everybody. We're going to talk about Eryn Porter Rockwell, a.k.a. Porter, a.k.a. Old Port, a.k.a. the Destroying Angel.
Ooh.
Yeah, okay. So,
The Destroying Angel.
The Destroying
that is
Angel.
such a better moniker than Super Miranda.
well, yeah. I mean, I can't even, yeah. So, Rockwell, he was born on either June 28th, 1813, or maybe June 25th, 1815. Uncertain.
And so I would have thought the year would have been consistent.
You know, one would think, but
Meh.
yeah. So he was born whatever year this is.
Right.
And-
Sometime early 1800s-ish.
yes, in Belchertown, Massachusetts. And by 1830, he lived in Fayette in western New York.
Okay.
And you're looking at me like, so? But I guarantee that everyone who has ever identified as Mormon is losing their freaking mind right now.
Okay.
You know why?
No, I don't.
All right, everybody. Let's
In
talk
case you
about
didn't
Mormonism.
know, Marie's a nerd. She looks so insanely delighted. It's like when Diana talks about insurance, guys.
Oh, yeah. So Joseph Smith, do you know the name Joseph Smith?
I do know the name Joseph Smith, yes. I also went to school with a guy whose name was Joseph Smith, but totally unrelated.
Okay, yeah. Well, this Joseph Smith, in 1827, he either received some golden plates from an angel named Moroni and begins translating these plates to create the Book of Mormon, or In 1827, he decides to start a new religion and makes up a bunch of stories that his friends write down to him that turn into the Book of Mormon. Either way, but as he's doing this, by early 1830, Joseph Smith is working to get it published, and Rockwell, in the same town, he's about 8 years younger, and he's doing odd jobs around town to help pay for the printing of the very first Book of Mormon.
Oh.
Yeah. So on April 6th, 1830, the Mormon Church was founded. And okay, everybody, humongous caveat right here. I'm using the terminology Mormon, which is what the majority of people understand, right? But back then, they were called Church of Christ. But today, depending on who you're talking to, this could be referred to as Mormon, Community of Christ, RLDS, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
Right? So
I've heard a number of those. I did not know they were the same thing.
Depending on perspective, they are, nuts to that. We're just going to go with Mormon, everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool.
That's also the shortest one.
Oh, yes, please. Really rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
So we're still in 1830, and Rockwell, of course, joins the church for his buddy, Joseph Smith. Yeah, right? And he was the youngest member of the first group of people that joined. Oh. And shortly after this, Joseph Smith receives a revelation from God that, hey, everybody, we're going to go to Kirtland, Ohio, which they all do. In 1831.
Can I just say how trippy it is that, this is not that long ago and it takes place in Ohio?
Yes.
These are just not, it's not like in Israel, thousands of years ago. No, it's just last week in Ohio.
Yeah, we have most of these documents, the things that I'm going to read. I found them because you can see PDFs of them online.
That's just bizarre.
It is
to me.
insane. So, we know that in 1831, Joseph is we're going to Kirtland, Ohio, which is basically right near Cleveland.
Okay.
Right. And so Rockwell follows along, and around 2 years later, at approximately age 18, he marries Luana Beebe on February 2nd, 1832.
Okay.
Right. So now we're in Kirtland, and Joseph Smith is receiving divine revelation from God all the time.
I just don't feel like God goes to Ohio.
Oh, God visited Ohio a lot. Just a lot. Because God cares so much about talking through his prophet Joseph Smith that these things, they're just everyday stuff with the church, also theology, also sending missionaries out. They try and fail to form a bank, which failed spectacularly. But the thing that we care about, because we're talking a bank,
the most religious of industries,
the Kirtland Safety Society. Didn't know.
No.
Yeah, but the revelation we care about is that Joseph, everybody gets to Kirtland, and then he's the promised land is in Independence, Missouri. Conveniently where the cheapest land is.
Yeah.
I mean, the Indian Removal Act had just happened, and so this had just been cleaned out, depending on perspective, or mass genocide is ongoing, depending on perspective.
I'm going to go with the latter.
Oh, yeah.
That would be my perspective, but, whatever. God is also apparently historically pretty cool with that, so...
Yeah, so Rockwell happened to be one of the first ones that goes out to Missouri to kind of scope out this promised land.
Right.
Which, think of the timing, everybody. This is frontier America. And so while Rockwell is out there, he gets real good with his gun.
Yeah.
Real good. So have you heard of somebody like Wyatt Earp?
Yeah, that is.
At this time, he was the same level of fame.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you're wondering, okay, so this whole perspective things, what does the church today think of this guy? So here's what the official church stance is. If you go to LDS.org, LatterdaySaints.org, because of his fearlessness, a number of unfounded charges were made against him, and he became a hunted man.
He murdered the shit out of a bunch of people.
In defense of his faithful and valiant friend, the prophet Joseph said, Eryn Porter Rockwell, who is now a fellow wanderer with myself, is an exile from his home because of the murderous deeds and infernal fiendish dispositions and unrelenting hand of the Missourians. So,
sorry, okay.
Yeah.
You can present all these perspectives and be super kind. I'm gonna just Laugh.
He is an innocent and noble boy. May God Almighty deliver him from the hands of his pursuers. Let the blessings of salvation and honor be his portion. History of the Church, Chapter 5, Section 125. Or it's the frontier of the West, and he's a large dude with a gun.
Yeah.
And, like, if you want to think of, like, what does he look like? He's a stocky guy, and accounts differ of when he started this, but Joseph apparently promised him that if he never cut his hair, a bullet would never harm him. So I think, like, Samson from the Old Testament. Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, but let's think about guns.
Yeah, guns. About guns.
How likely? Well, I guess if you're going to go out and shoot lots of people, your odds of being shot in return increase drastically.
Yeah, well, this is the era of mob mentality. So, like, there's the lawman, but there's also the lynch mob. Like, it's frontier America. So, like, this is kind of... Think of this setting, but then also think of there's this religious movement that's starting.
Yeah.
And so suddenly there's a lot of people in Missouri, like kind of bouncing back and forth between Ohio and Missouri. Because
weirdly.
Well, because Joseph is mostly in Ohio.
Yeah.
But he keeps on having this revelation. He's like, everybody, you got to go to Zion, give us all your money to join our church and go to Zion. And so this is where the Mormons are starting to move en masse from Kirtland to Independence, and it is not going well because the Mormons are really poor. Like the group of people who join, they're just really poor, and it's not like they have a lot of money to get there, so they'll spend like everything they have, and then they'll arrive with no job, no place to stay. So like that's a problem.
Nothing to contribute.
And they were also practicing communal living. So in the Book of Acts, the very first Christians kind of had a little communist society, and so they were trying to mimic this.
Okay.
But again, everybody was really poor.
Right.
So it didn't really matter. So that's a problem. But then all these really, really poor people with no prospects, no anything to really contribute are like, this is our promised land. And so the residents of Missouri are like, what the actual fuck, you guys?
Right.
What are you doing?
You can leave now.
Yeah. So in 1834, more and more people coming in. And the Missourians are not happy, so they start doing things like kicking the Mormons out of town. Or the Mormons put all of their money together. They buy a printing press. They're going to be publishing their religious documents. And so the Missourians burn the printing press to the ground.
I mean, that's kind of harsh.
Yeah. It is real harsh, you guys.
That somehow seems worse than kicking you out of town.
Yeah. And in all this, Rockwell, he's a big burly guy with a gun in the middle of this.
Yeah.
It's going on for years. So, let me ask you a question.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever heard of the Mormon War of 1838?
No. I am still stuck on... I mean, I guess if he does get injured by a bullet, he's probably going to die, so it won't matter that Joseph Smith was wrong.
I know, right? But we're not even there yet.
There's a Mormon War?
Yeah.
Okay, how many people have to be involved for it to count as a war?
Upwards of 20,000?
How many wizards do you think there are in Britain?
Well, there was one prophet of God, and so it's June, everybody. June 1838. And we are on the westernmost edges of Missouri, frontier towns, mobocracy. So the governor of Missouri at the time is a man named Lilburn Boggs. And Lilburn. So we care about Boggs a lot.
We do.
We really do. Now, here's where historical controversy really, it occurs, but you have the Mormons.
Yes.
And you have the Missourians, fisticuffs, right? So the Missourians, they have, a militia.
Yeah.
And so the Mormons, they have the Danites. And the Danites, depending on your point of view, this was either a sanctioned group of Mormon fighters, a secret militia, if you will, that was created by and on behalf of Joseph Smith.
Okay.
Or it's a secret group of ruffians, and Joseph Smith had no idea, but it was really convenient that they always sided with everything that benefited Joseph.
again, I'm going to go ahead and just choose a side. The second one seems a little unlikely.
But we do know with certainty that the primary, founding member of it was a man named Samson Avard, and one of the key members was Eryn Porter Rockwell.
Well, because he had a gun.
And he was always around. So, so this is
He
where...
just wouldn't leave.
So I need to give you, I'm going to read 2 little excerpts that will give you some context for what happens immediately next. Because remember Boggs, we care about this guy.
We care about Boggs. I got it.
Yep, so June 17th, 1838, Sidney Rigdon, a spokesman for Joseph Smith, delivers a sermon called the Salt Sermon.
Okay.
We take God and all the holy angels to witness this day, that we warn all men in the name of Jesus Christ to come on us no more forever from this hour. We will bear it no more. Our rights shall no more be trampled on with impunity. The man or set of men who attempts it does so at the expense of their lives, and the mob that comes on us to disturb us, it shall be between us and them a war of extermination, for we will follow them until the last drop of their blood is spilled, or else they will have to exterminate us, for we will carry the seat of war to their own houses and their own families, and one party or other will be utterly destroyed. Remember it then, all men. Does this sound like the Mormons you know today? Like, say...
No. But that is kind of badass.
Right? It is super freaking badass.
Come at me one more time. I'm going to fucking kill everyone you know.
Yeah, so a couple days later, the Danite Manifesto is released. We have solemnly warned you that in the most determined manner, that if you do not cease this course of wanton abuse of the citizens of this county, that vengeance would overtake you sooner or later. That when it did come, it would be as furious as the mountain torrent, as terrible as the beating tempest, and vengeance sleepeth not.
That one sounds more sermon-like than the first one. I think they should have swapped them.
But it's so like this is widely circulated, and the Danites. I mean, were they protecting their people from persecution?
Well, that was my question. So, when the Mormons show up in Missouri with nothing, are they displacing people, stealing land? Like, are they?
They are.
Or was it just more like, no, we don't want you here?
There was a program at the time where you could buy land on credit. So the idea was you would move there, you could get a parcel of land for free or very, very low.
Right.
And then about, say, 2 years later, you would start paying it back. So the Mormons moved in.
Right.
But they were doing this communal living thing. And so any money that they're earning, they're giving to the church. And so Joseph had some real nice houses. They were building a real nice temple in Ohio. So all these banknotes are coming due. Across the board defaulting on it.
Okay. So it is fair that they were like, now you need to leave.
Yes, they were.
Okay. Right.
And there's also, around this time, there's a thing that's still called the depredations. And so it's all perspective. But it's really the concept that the Mormons, they would go to a town and they would, say, loot a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
Or not. But then the Missourians would go and they would steal things, or they're just taking their stuff back.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
okay.
But it goes from we don't like them to everyone is stealing from each other to shots are being fired.
Right.
So
well, and after a while, it doesn't really matter who did what. Like it's not going to resolve. But okay.
Yeah. So it gets real bad, like seriously bad. And Governor Boggs, in charge of this whole region, he dealt with this in a very hands-off approach. So, like, he would sign requisition orders and authorize actions for the militia, but he never actually went. Like, and he would just kind of hope it would fizzle out as winter's approaching, but it did not. So, for example, at one point, the Mormons intercepted an official shipment of Missouri militia guns, and they just took the guns.
Yeah, I mean... When God is on your side, you can do whatever the hell you want, right?
Yeah.
It's really convenient that way.
It is, but September to October 1838, the militias, Missouri militias, are surrounding Missouri settlements, and if they're not chasing them out of town, there is a massacre at Haun's Mill. Like, they just shoot the Missourians, including children.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's, which if you think is real bad, it gets worse. And so you would think that, say, Governor Boggs would go in and he'd be like, okay, let's sit down, let's talk about this.
At this point now, I need to take action.
He took action. October 27th, 1838, Governor Boggs issues Missouri Executive Order 44, more commonly known as the Mormon Extermination Order.
Okay. To be fair.
Yes.
They did say, we will either exterminate you or you will have to exterminate us. They only gave him 2 options.
They did.
And he wasn't about to choose the first.
Yeah. So this is what he said. The Mormons must be treated as enemies and must be exterminated or driven from the state if necessary for the public peace.
I just also feel that if you're a political figure, exterminate should never appear in a written document.
No. So this Mormon extermination order wasn't removed from Missouri laws until 1976.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
That was far, far too not long enough ago.
Yeah, and we aren't even to the crime yet. But the crime doesn't make sense if you don't know this. So
I feel like there is a lot of crime happening, actually, Marie.
So Mormon War is happening. I am skipping over so much. Everyone, you can go to my show, My Book of Mormon podcast, and we did a 2-parter called The Mormon War of 1838.
I feel like that is in my immediate future, actually.
It is a thing.
And then next week I'll be like, guess what I learned? You already know all this.
So Joseph Smith eventually surrenders, and the Danites are officially disbanded.
Interesting.
Samson Avard, remember him, the leader of the Danites?
Yeah.
The Mormons excommunicated him. And over the winter, all of the Mormons resettled to Nauvoo, Illinois, including Porter Rockwell. He managed to escape along with a man, when Joseph was arrested, it was kind of a round up all the leaders situation.
Yeah.
Which they did get most of the leaders at the time, but a couple people managed to run away. Let's just say run away, including Rockwell and a man you may have heard of, Brigham Young.
That does sound familiar.
Yeah, Brigham Young University.
Yeah.
Pretty much every apartment complex in Salt Lake City is Brigham something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're now in, So here's the thing. The Danites, don't worry, they're disbanded. So everyone settles in Nauvoo, Illinois, except that the same guys that were the Danites just happen to be the police force. I mean, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
I thought that maybe they weren't even officially, part of anything sanctioned.
Oh, it's just real convenient, isn't it?
But then how do you disband something that you didn't sanction?
I have no idea. Hush. Okay. Don't think of such things.
Don't think.
that
Full stop.
Yeah, that critical thinking you're doing, just slow it. Nope. Okay. So Joseph Smith eventually gets out of prison, which is a story for another day. And he joins everyone in Nauvoo, and he gets himself a bodyguard. Want to guess who is his bodyguard?
I mean, I feel like it's probably a guy with a gun.
A guy by the name of Orrin Porter Rockwell.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Oh,
burly guy
Yep.
with a gun who doesn't cut his hair.
Yeah, so Joseph allegedly prophesied that Lilburn Boggs would die by violent means.
Oh, that's convenient.
Convenient. Yeah. So Boggs finishes his term in 1840, and in 1842, due in large part to how well he handled the Mormon conflict, he's elected to the Senate.
Wow. I just, again, with the word exterminate.
I think it's time for the part where everything gets interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can handle much more interesting.
It's late February 1842, and Luana Rockwell is pregnant with Porter Rockwell's 4th child. And she decides that she wants to have her baby at her mom's place, her mom and dad's place, which, girl, same.
Yeah,
it's nice to have family support.
Yeah.
So their other 3 children stay with family friends, and, the Rockwells make the trek down to Independence, Missouri.
Oh, no.
Because not all of the Mormons left. Some of them stayed. Some of them are still there to this day.
How do you not get exterminated?
They broke away from Joseph.
They just were quiet enough that no one cared.
Yep.
Okay.
So let's recap. Joseph Smith has prophesied that the promised land where God will return is at Independence, Missouri.
Yep.
Governor Boggs and Missouri militia forcibly remove the Mormons from Independence. Boggs gets elected to the Senate because of it. And 4 years later, Joseph's chief bodyguard just happens to be back where it all started.
Yeah.
So
And he should be taking care of his wife.
Right. So,
That's important at this point. Yeah.
Yes. And so what he does is he gets himself a short-term job working with horses to support his growing family until the baby is old enough to travel back to Nauvoo. The baby is born. All's well. He's working with horses.
Okay.
Cool. May 6th, 1842. It's raining. It's muddy out. It's evening. So Boggs is sitting inside his home. His back is to the window, and his children are playing on the floor. Or just, being in the room, but, not in between him and in the window, which is good because a pistol full of buckshot fires through the window. One bullet enters the back of Boggs' skull. The other went right into his jaw. 2 entered his throat, one of which he swallowed.
Wow.
So Boggs' teenage son hears the shot. He runs into the room and sees his father unconscious in the chair with, and I apologize, everyone, his jaw was not exactly fully attached.
But dramatically just dropped what I was holding.
You did. I mean, it was attached on one side. So, that's
just
cool.
Not exactly fully attached.
Yeah, good news. The children were unharmed.
Yes.
Yes, there were 13 buckshot holes found in the room.
Wow.
And so a doctor and the sheriff are called immediately, right? And they look out.
Still alive.
Wait for it. So they look outside the window, and in the mud, they find a pistol. And the gun was of a make that should have had, it has 4 chambers.
Yeah.
And 3 of them are full, and 1 is empty. And they looked in the 3 that were full, and it's meant for 1 bullet.
Yeah.
And instead, it was just crammed full of buckshot. And it was loaded in such a way that the kick would have, the recoil would have kicked the gun out of the gunman's hand. So probably what happened is that, too much gun power, in this gun.
Yeah.
It fires, and whoever. I mean, no idea, right?
Who.
No idea. Yep, drops the gun and runs away. So they do find some footprints, but it is also 1842, so it's not like you can CSI this, right?
Yeah. Well, plus it's raining. You're not going to get him anyway.
Yeah, but townsfolk are like, "What is happening over there? Let's go check it out." And so a baker by the name of Olinger or Hoolinger,
Yeah.
he looks at the gun. He's like, "That's mine. Remember, it was stolen from my shop yesterday," and it was.
Well, I know who steals guns.
Well, he also knows who came in and said, "Hey, that's a real pretty gun." Man by the name of Rockwell. And the gun disappears. So who did it? Here's what we know about Rockwell. So that evening, his wife and infant, they are tucked into bed, and he's like, "I'm going to go saddle a horse, and I just have some stuff to do. I'm going to leave for a ride."
It's raining. It's a lovely day for a ride.
He just happens to be a couple miles away from Senator Boggs. He happens to have a loose connection to the pistol, and he is gone. So next day, Luana and the infant, they're still in Independence, but Porter Rockwell, nope. May 14th, 1842, 9 days later, he arrives in Nauvoo, Illinois. Now, here's the thing.
Without his wife and child.
Without his wife and child. Without saying, he is gone. So if you look at Google Maps, I'm going to save everybody some searching here.
Yeah.
That's a 4.5 hour drive today, around 250-ish miles, or an 82-hour walk from Independence to Nauvoo. So
but he had a horse.
He did have a horse, but given where Boggs' home was and where the Mormons were living at the time, it's closer to 300 miles. So that means in 1842, in frontier America, he was moving between 25 and 35 miles a day for 9 days.
Holy shit.
May 15th, 1842, one day after Rockwell arrives in Nauvoo, news of Senator Boggs' shooting arrives when a leader in the church preaches it from the pulpit that Senator Boggs has been shot.
Yeah.
New official newspaper news didn't arrive till several days after that.
No, I'm sure, because that was, already super fast.
Yeah.
Gee, I wonder how he possibly could have known.
No idea. So for weeks, all the papers assumed that Senator Boggs would pass away, and occasionally obituaries would be printed.
Oh, God. I so hope nobody ever prints my obituary
Oh,
while
my
I'm
God.
still alive.
Yeah. The good news here is that Boggs survived.
I find that amazing. So I find that amazing, not because the bullets didn't kill him, but that he didn't just die from an infection or some bizarre medical treatment or wow.
Yeah. So in all of this, Boggs, he holds on, and by July, all the news articles shift from "he's definitely gonna die" to "oh my gosh, he survived." Who did it, right?
Whoops! What about that obituary we published?
Yeah,
Just
oops.
forget about that.
retract. So the good news of him, he recovers basically fully. He and his family moved to California in 1846, and he retires at a ranch in Napa County in 1855. Passes away in 1860 at the age of 64.
Not violently.
Not violently. He lives out his life.
Also, if that happened to me in Missouri,
Or Indiana.
or Indiana,
Yeah.
Florida, Alaska, I also would move.
Yes, I would move. He moved, yes. But back to the Mormons. So, in the whole whodunit, like, everybody is looking at the Mormons. So let me take a quote. It's from a man, John C. Bennett. He was, at this time, he was a leader in the church, but he rapidly became not. Because while he was a member of Joseph Smith's inner circle, he got caught seducing women with the promise that he could give them an abortion if they got pregnant. He reported that Joseph Smith had offered a cash reward to anyone who assassinated Boggs, and Rockwell had made a veiled threat against Bennett if Bennett publicized that. So maybe Bennett was just a disillusioned apostate who rejected God and was spreading lies. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think that's that's really definitely what happened. The rest of it was just coincidence.
Yeah. So Rockwell was reported to be suddenly flush with cash.
Total coincidence.
Yep. And so, again, remember, while the Danites were technically disbanded in 1838, all these guys were the police force in Nauvoo, right? So whenever anybody would come to, do some investigating, a little thing called the Whistlin' and Whittlin' Brigade would come out. So this would be all the children. All the children would come out, and they would just kind of follow everybody around and whistle and whittle. And the Danites would just kind of stand there and look. And it would just intimidate the hell out of any visitors or investigators.
You wouldn't even need the Danites. If a whole bunch of children were following me around with little knobs whistling, I would go home.
Yeah, so, I just need to take a moment to say, however you feel about Mormons today, this is not who Mormons were in 1842.
Yeah.
So, August 8th, 1842, Joseph Smith and Rockwell were arrested and placed in the Adams County Jail, which is one county south of Nauvoo. But you will be shocked to learn that Joseph Smith, who was the religious leader of the Mormons and also the mayor of the town, and his followers were all of the leaders of the area, they were out in 2 days.
Yeah.
Yep. Joseph fled to Iowa for several months, and we're done caring about him because we care about Rockwell. Am I right?
I thought we cared about Boggs. I don't have enough care to go.
Whatever. Boggs, he's fine. He's recovering. He moves to California. He lives a good life.
Lots of wine.
So much freaking wine.
Yeah.
So Rockwell he's apprehended. He's not apprehended till the next March. So he basically just flees in August. They catch him in March. He briefly escapes from jail in May, but comes back in. Oops. But Rockwell's reputation as a deadly gunman was very clear. So at his trial, literally, this is the defense they did. He said he never shot at anybody. If I shoot, they get shot.
Yeah.
So, I don't miss. And Joseph Smith, when investigators asked him about the accusations and Rockwell's involvement, Smith denied it because it couldn't have been Rockwell because Boggs is still alive, isn't he?
That takes a lot of balls.
It does,
to
doesn't
be
it?
your defense. Wow.
But remember, everything they had on him was circumstantial. Everything.
And yet, I'm 100% convinced.
Uh-huh.
I probably shouldn't be on that jury, but at the same time, like, he needs to go to jail.
Well, though he was never successfully indicted for the attempted assassination.
God.
There wasn't enough evidence, so he was tried and convicted of the jailbreak. But Rockwell maintained his innocence. The grand jury was like, too much circumstantial evidence. Sorry.
Wow.
And so he was released on December 13th, 1843, 10 months after his arrest. So, what happens next, right?
Oh my God.
So, Rockwell sticks by Joseph's side, and on June 27th in 1844, Joseph Smith's house of cards falls apart spectacularly, and he's killed by a mob. That's a story for another day. But Rockwell finds himself in need of a new boss, and the religion needs a new prophet, Brigham Young.
Oh my God.
So the Mormons, for the most part, they pack up eventually, and they leave Illinois, and they move to the Mexico territory. There were some real issues with counterfeiting, polygamy, money laundering. Yeah, there's, all of this. And so they literally left America, moved to Mexico,
Right.
into a valley by a really great salt lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a tribe there called the Utes.
Yeah.
So Rockwell,
And inconveniently.
yeah, inconveniently, there were lots of stories there. Yeah, also not for today. So Rockwell died in the summer of 1878, and he'd been a member of the church longer than anyone else then living.
Did he get shot?
Nope.
Damn it. I was really hoping that's how it would end.
At his funeral service, Elder Joseph F. Smith of a leading council at the time, he's a big deal.
Because he shared the same name with Joseph Smith.
there's a lot. Anyway, he said at the funeral, he had his little faults, but Porter's life on earth, taken altogether, was one worthy of example and reflected honor upon the church. Though all his trials, he had never once forgotten his obligation to his brethren or his God. Or,
Speechless.
the author Fitzhugh Ludlow in 1870 wrote a book called The Heart of the Continent, a record of travel across the plains and in Oregon with an examination on the Mormon principle. Here's what he said. But Porter Rockwell was that most terrible instrument that can be handled by fanaticism, a powerful physical nature welded to a mind of very narrow perceptions, intense convictions, and changeless tenacity. In his build, he was a gladiator. In his humor, a Yankee lumberman. In his memory, a Bourbon. In his vengeance, an Indian. A strange mixture only to be found on the American continent. And that is the story of Eryn Porter Rockwell.
That was amazing. Wow. It just sounds fake.
It does,
It sounds
doesn't it?
fake from start to finish.
It is absolutely true.
It's kind of like someone was like, we should write a book. And the person next to them was like, no, let's just do it.
Yeah, basically. And people ask me, why do you do your podcast? Why do you? I'm like,
Right.
You guys, this is why I do this show.
Right.
And
That is just amazing. I love it.
Yeah, if you read all these revelations that Joseph Smith had,
Yeah.
like they're all written down, including the ones that never made it in. So
Right.
you can read through it, and like Wikipedia exists, and
Yeah.
official papers exist, so you can see all these names and you can find this history. And so it's like, yeah, you're reading religious stuff, but you're reading history, and you watch all of this develop, and it is violent, very violent.
Yeah. That's just insane. It's just because all of the Bible would be the same way, right? It's extremely violent. It's all like just absolutely bizarre. But it was so long ago that you're like, yeah, but it's just because people kept telling it over and over again. No, this was like, no, it's just, that just happened. And
Do you want to see the actual newspapers?
Right.
You can do that.
You can do that.
They're
We
in the
have
special
them.
archives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's cool. I liked that story.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it very much.
My next one, because I am hoping that I can come back.
You may absolutely
Thank
come back.
you, because there are more stories.
I believe it. I feel like that. I feel like there are spin-off stories from this.
There are. I have one from the 1980s.
Which is when we were born.
I know, and this other one, also crazy pants.
And like 50 years after Diana was born. Diana, I love you.
Sick burn. Ooh,
She's not in the room, so I can say it.
Yeah.
Wow. That was fascinating. I like it. All right. So let's move on, because I know that you know all the segments. So let's move on to the next one.
I do know lots of your segments. Yes, because now is the time. Oh, wait. This is when you talk about podcasts that you've been listening to and recommend them to others.
I know. But I'm going to switch it up a little bit.
Okay.
For a couple reasons. I mean, the most obvious reason being, like, we should talk about your podcast.
Yeah.
And then the second, also really real reason is that I've only been listening to Binge Mode. So
Okay.
I have lots to say, but it's about stuff I've already talked about.
Yeah.
So,
well, if anybody listened to that story and was like, I think I need to know more.
that would be me right here.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
I mean, I have all your episodes downloaded
You do,
on my
yes.
phone. So
I've definitely found that for my show, the people who listen tend to be the extreme religious nerds like me.
yeah.
Or they used to be Mormon and then they've left, or they're thinking of leaving, but they've never read like every single aspect of all of the paper. Like nobody reads that. Like
Yeah.
nobody does that. And so they're listening to us so they can learn about it, and also it's kind of fun to play along with the drinking game.
So do they ever then decide, yeah, I'm going to stick with it?
Occasionally.
Really?
Yes, I do have true believing believers that they definitely listen to my show, and they'll email me very nice emails every once in a while,
Yeah.
like, you're just not understanding this correctly, and then they'll give an apologist view of whatever I'm saying, and I'm like, that's interesting, but here's what the actual text says, so I get
Yeah.
that you have an interpretation, but I'm going with what it says.
So then do you call that out on the next episode and say, so I got this really great email?
Sure, sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes. Okay.
Yeah, like we have the beginning of every episode that we have, it's like if there's an interesting comment that, like if we messed something up, like we are very
Yeah,
own
own
like
it.
whoops.
That would be me every week. Guys, here, I'm just going to own it. I messed 10 things up today.
Yeah, so like if you go back and you listen to our Mormon War episodes, like the first 20 minutes of the first episode, we're talking about how the leadership of the church was structured, because it's very confusing, because there's lots of groups of 12 old white dudes who are in charge, and
I mean,
with similar
isn't that
names.
like every...
Yeah. So like I have so much fun on there. And so I do it with my co-host. His name is Bryce Blanknagel. And he also has his own podcast, which I highly recommend, where it is straight history. And so his is called Naked Mormonism. I know. Naked Mormonism. Yep.
Ooh, that doesn't sound terribly appealing. No.
No, so his he's doing the actual like deep dive of the hardcore research of all of it. And
So is his history from an outsider's point of view, or does he take the texts and like that also counts as historical record?
yes, so he was raised Mormon but left the church before he went on his mission. So he left when he was like 16-ish or so, and then he started actually researching like who are these names, and he's the level of research he's doing is astonishing. I'm just like reading stuff and having fun.
Yeah.
And on his show, he is actually making trips out to Kirtland to look at, and he's interviewing leaders of the church, and he's going like, and so his show is in chronological order. And so he started like back when Joseph receives his first vision that this is how the church is supposed to be, and then like going slowly through it. So right now, I think he's actually in the Nauvoo era in the 1840s. And so he did a whole episode on Boggs getting shot. And so and I think it aired on July 25th, 2018.
That is I think it aired on this exact date.
It's possible. I listened to it completely yesterday.
Okay. I think it definitely said on my podcast player this morning.
Yeah, so he gets more into that, but also he goes in depth to like the character of John C. Bennett that I mentioned, and his, oh, yes, sleep with me, everything's great. God told me that you should. And don't worry, I can give you an abortion.
Right.
Got a whole mess of that going on, too.
Wow. I just didn't realize it was also insanely fascinating. Also, I'm and I've said it before, but I'm like the worst podcaster because I'm like, listen, and interact and engage and leave us reviews. And I just don't do very well with that.
If it helps, I have never once on my show ever asked anybody to go to iTunes to leave a review.
No.
I don't even know how to check. Like, I know there are some there.
Yeah.
Zero clue.
So what we found is that we had to find like a collector, like somebody that, and actually I think, so this is, Diana's the structured, disciplined part of all of this. So I believe that she pays for a subscription service that does that. Because iTunes in every country, if I live in Australia and I leave a review, it's on Australia's iTunes. And I'm not going to be able to see it, but I also can't see it because I don't Apple if I can help it.
Yeah, I love interacting with people and the emailing back and forth and the tweeting. So I mean, I'm on Twitter at My Book of Mormon, you know, and I'm on there, and you can email me if you'd like, comments at mybookofmormonpodcast.com.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, and like it's just Bryce and I, we have so much fun with Mormon history because I think people who don't know anything about it, like the only Mormons that they know are like Donnie and Marie Osmond. Woo. Yeah. Or Mitt Romney. Yay.
Right. Or like, hey, don't they all live in Utah? I think that's where they all live.
Yeah,
like,
something with that. Yeah.
Not very, or know a couple, like me, I know a couple names.
Yeah.
Joseph Smith. Yeah, that totally sounds familiar. I got that.
Yeah, but it's also, clearly the history is a lot more interesting than you think it is. But Mormons in American society and world society, like they're everywhere. You just don't really notice it. But like the Senate Judiciary Committee in the prior term, 1/4 of that was Mormon.
Wow.
Yeah. So like when Senator Jeff Flake was responding to everything during the Kavanaugh hearings, he wasn't responding to America. There was a group of Mormon women who had written official letters. He was responding to those letters. He was like if you ever saw him on like everything, he was only talking to Mormons, but nobody else knew it.
Is it just terribly judgmental of me to think it is absolutely bizarre for people to believe in something that was created a century and a half ago? Like,
well, or what? It's all perspective. Like maybe Joseph Smith was a divine revelator.
It just seems like, I don't know, like the magic of like the magic that's involved in any kind of religion, right? That should have occurred a really long time ago. Well, yeah. I don't know.
You guys, I don't have an answer for you there, but I do know
strange.
that, it's like Utah is a thing. And it happens to be a recent thing. Like my house is as old as Utah.
Wow.
Right? You've been in my house. And it's old, but it's in very good condition. But we're a new country.
Yeah.
And this is a new religion.
Well, and I think that's the thing is like even though I have only ever been American, like I don't really take our history terribly seriously because I feel like it's only been for the last second or so.
Yeah.
And everywhere else has more history.
Yeah.
So it's just so, what a weird thing I've never thought about.
Well, I'm really grateful that I was able to come on here and talk to you about it.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited to go listen to your podcast. So next week, my podcast that I have been listening to will be My Book of Mormon.
Well, right now, if you were to head over to My Book of Mormon podcast, available wherever you find podcasts.
Yes.
What we're doing right now is we're reading the non-canon revelations.
Yes.
So everything that Joseph wrote down, and that's like you can go to any Mormon church and pick up a copy of it, and you can read. It's called the Doctrine and Covenants. But not everything got printed, but we still have the original books. So let's read the stuff that just didn't make it in.
Which is also weird to me.
Yep.
Like, how do you determine Which one?
It's, well, as far as we can tell, some of them, like, because you don't ultimately know, because you have a book from a while ago, right? Like,
yeah.
But some of them, it's revelations that just definitely never came true before. Like, he would give a revelation.
Yeah.
Stuff would happen where clearly it was never going to occur. And so that page just didn't make it into the printing.
That's awfully convenient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but others, like, it's just administrative, repetitive stuff. And so, yeah, we don't need to do that.
Okay. That makes me feel better about
yeah, so
that
sometimes
part,
it's that. But also... there was also a bunch of infighting in his scribes because Joseph Smith, he wasn't very great at writing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So he would always have a friend do the writing for him.
Gotcha.
And some of those guys, like Sidney Rigdon, the spokesman that I mentioned, he really wanted to be in charge.
Right.
He was expecting Joseph to like go on his merry way, and then Sidney would take over, which didn't happen. But then there's another scribe, Oliver Cowdery. And Oliver Cowdery is suddenly Joseph's new best friend, and Sidney is very jealous, and so he goes and he just crosses out this whole section that says that Oliver is important and it never gets published.
Gotcha.
Right?
So they were teenage girls.
Yes. Okay. They were squabbling for power.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if I go and start your podcast, like, you know, maybe tonight.
Oh, God.
Where do I start? Do I go all the way back to episode 1? And people ask us that too, like when I'm talking to somebody at work or somebody I've just met, and I don't know the answer because... Oh,
I don't know the answer for mine because with my show, I didn't start it.
Right.
Because it was started in 2014 by a man named David Michael, and he started reading the Book of Mormon, and then it was my favorite podcast. But then he got a big promotion at work right around when he started reading the Doctrine and Covenants. So these revelations by Joseph Smith. And so he put out a little thing on the main feed saying, hey, anybody want my show? And so I sent him a bullet-pointed list of why I should take over his show. And so I talked with Bryce for about half an hour and was like, sure, let's give it a shot. And so we've been doing it for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Now, so it's, I would say if you wanted to just listen to something and just kind of get an idea of what's going on. This last summer in 2018, Bryce and I did a presentation at Sunstone Symposium, and you'll see it in the show names. Because we'd finished reading the Doctrine and Covenants, and so we kind of give an overview of like the history and the things we learned.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so like that would give you a really solid foundation of here's some context.
Right. Which I definitely would need.
Yeah, right. But you can basically just kind of, you can go, you can see when I took over, because there's a show that's called Introducing Marie in 2016, right? And so David Michael did a very fine job, but he needed to work on his day job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're just going to listen, if you want to listen to the history, anything Doctrine and Covenants start around, whenever I show up, and I'd never done it before, so the first ones are a bit rough, but
that's why I never know how to say where to start. I'm going to reference episode 1 all the time, but I also know it sucked, so no.
Yeah, but honestly, you pick up just randomly in the middle of the Doctrine and Covenants, you'll join along, because I didn't know any of this when I started.
Yeah.
Bryce knew it, so he was teaching me, so you can just follow along on my journey of learning it all. Mm-hmm.
That is so cool. I love your, I guess, cover art. I don't know what the but where it's you've crossed out and amended.
Yes. Yeah, because the original art was My Book of Mormon. My Book of Mormon. It was the Book of Mormon.
The Book of Mormon. Yeah.
The Book of Mormon, in the actual font.
Yeah.
And then it said and David.
Yeah.
And so then I just had my friend cross it out and put Anne Marie.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So
I like it. Mm-hmm. I like it. Awesome. So you guys should definitely join me in listening to Marie's podcast.
Well, thank
I'm really
you.
excited. And what have you been listening to?
I have been listening to a show called Apocropals.
Okay.
It's 2 guys, Chris and Benito, and they are reading through the Apocrypha and the books of the Bible, but they aren't reading through it. They're just talking about the stories.
Right.
Which are wild.
Yeah.
There are exploding wizards in the Bible. Did you know that?
I didn't, but now suddenly it's more appealing.
Yeah, because you're reading along, and then you're like learning just some basic word structure in Hebrew.
Yeah.
And so of course the term for that is Abba, and then Abba music plays. Like,
Nice.
I have laughed so hard because they did a Halloween special where like Jesus goes down to hell, right? And so you have to play Monster Mash in the background of that. Obviously.
Nice. Also, I think I'm beginning to understand like your interests.
Yeah, I have been. I have interrupted coworkers with my laughing at work as I'm listening to Apocropals.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, man, I'm real fun to have at parties, you guys. Just.
I mean,
Fabulous.
you can talk about exploding wizards, and I'll talk about people who think they're wizards that blow people up, and
I think that's great.
That's going to be good.
That's where we are.
Nice. Awesome. All right, so you have some new things to listen to, but you also have some jobs. Not you, but them. They have jobs.
I think that your dear listeners should go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review because we like those the best.
That is true. Marie is such a good listener.
Oh, I've listened to your show. I don't think I haven't. I think they can also, leave reviews on other ones and let you know, and so then you'll listen to them, and it's like a chain of listening to podcasts.
Yeah,
and
it was originally like, if you leave us a review, then we will go out and each leave a review for something. But then this season we were like, I mean, still please leave us a 5-star review, but we're going to continue to listen to podcasts anyway, so let's be real, we'll just tell you about them. So yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although if you do, I mean, of course we will shout you out. And I am bad. I think there's at least one in the email that I am not shouting out this time because I'm just not going to get to it.
Also, I'm here and the computer is way over there.
It's true.
And like the way I have set things up here, you guys, it is not logistically convenient to go look at that. My apologies.
not.
That's on me.
And there's been just a little chaos in the
Just a
world
bit.
recently, and so I'm just not prepared.
Yeah, it's not Mormon War of 1838 chaos, but it's getting there.
Yeah. That's a terrifying thought. Thank you. Now I will not be able to sleep tonight.
Mission accomplished. But I do think that you guys should go over to their Instagram and follow their Instagram, Crime Crazy Pod, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, because, okay, you guys, in case you didn't think I was a nerd, so your shows come out, and then I go to Instagram and I look at the pictures.
Yeah.
Like, there was the one where the car flipped and went sideways into the house, and that wasn't the winning picture of the week because there was a crazier story. And I'm like, what? So what you got to do is you got to go to the Instagram because, spoiler alert, there's going to be a picture of Orrin Porter Rockwell on there and his fabulously long hair.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So any hair? Was he not allowed to cut any hair?
There is a rumor that when he was out in Utah, there was a widow who had lost her hair for some reason, and so he cut his long locks of hair, got turned into a wig, and then he grew it all back.
I mean, I feel like that should not count against him.
Yeah, but
the one thing he did good in the world.
Right? But basically, as soon as Joseph said, "Hey, don't cut your hair," he did not cut his hair.
Joseph
Big beard.
was like, I wonder what I can make him do. Mm-hmm. Don't cut your hair.
God. Yes.
Huh.
So check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, we will definitely. And I am going to make so much effort to post all these pictures because usually Diana handles all of them.
Yes. Well, I'll send you a link to Orrin Porter Rockwell.
Sounds good. Awesome. All right. So Instagram is at Crime Crazy Pod. Twitter is at Crime Crazy Pod. I have set up an IFT trigger so that if I post something on Instagram, it'll automatically post on Twitter. So, wherever you want to go. crimecrazypodcast.com is the website, and you can subscribe there also so that you get notifications when we post a new episode. So like when it's not when you would expect it to be, you'll still be notified. And our email address is crimecrazypodcast@gmail.com. Oh no, are you going to give advice?
Oh,
Diana always gives advice.
Well, I'm pretty sure the advice here is don't get in that car if there's a lumpy blanket in the back.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's pretty
Also,
simple.
when in doubt, make a prophecy that is convenient for you.
Oh, it worked for Joseph Smith for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, oops, mob.
Yeah, so maybe perhaps don't start a new religion.
Just don't start a new religion. You can pretty much be safe with that. Just don't do it.
Right. I mean, at least you won't be less safe that way. Also, call your people.
Call your people.
And don't end up on next week's episode.
This is Malcolm had a cough, and he kept on coughing directly into my face.
Yeah, that is Sophie too. And then she gets more and more dramatic about it and coughs harder and harder even when she doesn't need to.
Well, Malcolm woke me up this morning at 5:30 in the morning by going, gross. And so I run in there because I was expecting that he like barfed, and he's like, there's boogers in my nose. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
You know, though, as mad as I would have been about being awoken that way, there's so much relief.
God, there was no barf. There was 0% barf.
Yeah, that's far better.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.